Hey guys, Mike Toy, Bonsai Boise. So as you can see here, I've got another Schefflera clump. I've done tons of videos on these. I'm kind of a fan of working with them. Not because they're super exotic or rare, but the opposite, because they're actually pretty common, pretty cheap. You can get them just about anywhere, but if you time it right, at the right time of year, you can get a really good deal on them and get it when it's got a lot of good potential, like this one. So I got this one today for $10 at Fred Meyer's. I've seen them at Fred Meyer's, Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, pretty much any big box store. But there's a lot you can do with them. And so what I'm gonna do now is just sort of walk through my thought process of what I look for when I'm looking at these, so that if you wanna try doing one, which I would encourage you to do, these are very hardy. They're very forgiving. You can mess up on them a lot and it sort of forgives you for it. They're not completely forgiving. I've killed them before. I got too aggressive, you know, at the wrong time, and so some of those things are what I'm going to talk about. Some of the pitfalls to avoid, some of the things I look for as far as what am I going to do with it once I do find one that I like, and then what do I do with some of the cuttings. So follow me and we'll jump right in and I'll start talking about that. All right, I'm back. So some of the things that I look for when I'm shopping for these. The very first thing I do if I see these on a clearance rack or someplace is I kind of dive in and I try to get an idea of what the trunks look like. So if the trunks are really green like this, lots and lots of these stems, I'm not interested. If, however, I see a bunch of these woody-like trunks, then I'm interested. After that, I try to dig in even more. In here, I'm gonna actually get rid of a little bit of foliage here, just so we can see better in there. I don't want to get rid of too much yet, but I do want to be able to see what's happening. So from there, try to look inside even more and see, does it have aerial roots? They don't look like aerial roots now, but they will when we take it out of here and we, repot it and get the old soil out and put in new soil. That's when these things become aerial roots. Because these will all be exposed, which gives it character. So I look, does it have that? Another thing I look for, how healthy is it? You don't have to be a bonsai scientist to determine whether or not it's healthy. I mean, does it have bright green, shiny, glossy leaves? Well, then it's probably healthy. If it's got, they're always gonna have some kind of weird deformed looking leaves, but if it's all a bunch of leaves like this and none of these, it's probably not very healthy. Could be due to anything, really. Who knows how much care these things actually get. Whoopsie, sorry about that. When they're in the store, but could be due to anything. So if it's not very healthy looking, I would probably pass, unless I really feel like I can salvage it and bring it back from whatever sorry state it's in. So those are some of the things that I look for. This one in particular got my interest because A, it met all those first qualifying things, and B, it's got what appears to be I think there's 3 actual clumps in here. I think that this is one, and I think this and there is another. if I'm not mistaken, then look at this big guy right here. Let's see if I can give you a better look here. Look at that. That's a big old trunk right there for a Schefflera. So it really had a lot of good potential in there. So I didn't need any more Scheffleras. In fact, I just posted a video like a month ago where I consolidated a whole bunch of cuttings because I had too many. But this one was just too good to pass up. And I do give these things out as gifts a lot for Christmas and birthdays and whatever. So it'll give me an excuse to, you know, make a bunch of individual bonsais if I want. So on that note, a couple other things that I do with these once it meets all the qualifications and I decide I'm going to get it. I try not to decide ahead of time what exactly I'm going to do with it. It's good to have an idea, but you never really know until you dive in there. So like with this one, what I'm thinking is going to happen is probably I'll have a clump here and I'll make 3 or 4 separate bonsais out of it with 3 or 4 separate clumps like this. That's what I'm thinking. But other options that you have, and I try to stay open to as I'm going along, is you might just make one gigantic clump out of it. I've done that. You might make 10 individuals out of it. You just never know. You know, it's a living thing, so they're all going to be different, and there's no silver bullet method to it. So that's another area that I try to consider before going in is, you know, do I have an idea of what I want to do with it? And am I open to other things? So another thing that I typically do is I make cuttings out of these parts, because one of the very first things I do is reduce the size of it. I cut it down to, you know, somewhere in this area. Before I really start working on it too much, I cut it down to about there, give or take a little bit. And you can see all this stuff up here I'm not going to need, but got a lot of growth. These things propagate easy. So what I do as I'm going along here is I just take those cuttings here, if I can get my thing to cooperate. I just take the cuttings as I go along and I just stick them in a bucket of water. I leave them in the bucket of water for a few days, and then from there I do whatever I do with them. You can leave them in water and let them root there. You can plant them in soil. Oftentimes they'll root there. In this particular case, I've got a couple of other Schefflera clumps that I'm making myself. And I'm just putting the cuttings from all my Scheffleras into those 2 containers to make my own clump style bonsais out of them. So that's an idea. So now let's go ahead and dive in and start. I'm not going to fully defoliate it, but I'm going to partially defoliate it, and we're going to cut it down to size and kind of see what we're working with. So let's jump into that. All right, so let's go ahead and cut this thing down to size. One of the things that I try and do, it's not 100% necessary, but I try to do it when I can. Even though we're cutting this down quite a bit, I try to do it down to a point where, let's see if I can give you a good example. Let's just use this, let's pick on this guy. So I try to do it so that there is some kind of leaf or branch or something under the point where I'm cutting. So like if this is the lowest leaf or the lowest branch, I'm going to cut to right above that, or maybe even above it from there. But what I don't do typically is go under that, especially this time of year. This time of year, they don't grow as fast, this being end of November. So if it was the middle of summer, it wouldn't matter. You can cut it down to that and it'll just grow right from the stump. And it might still this time of year anyways, but I've just learned with these this time of year to try to leave some foliage on there so that it just gives it a better chance of survival and bouncing back. So that's one thing I do. Now in this particular case, even that lower one's got a couple of scraggly looking leaves. And this one's not much better. So I'm actually going to go above the second one here in this case. So I'm just going to cut right there. I'm just going to take this guy and throw it in the bucket, and I'll deal with it when we're all done. The way that I'm going to deal with it is to defoliate most of it. In fact, I'll just show you now for simplicity. See, this guy's kind of ugly and deformed, so we're going to get rid of that. I'm going to leave a little bit of foliage, probably this big, healthy looking leaf there, so I'll get rid of those. Maybe I'll even leave that one just for kicks. I don't want to leave too much on there, put too much stress on it to grow roots too quickly. But I want to leave some on there so it still absorbs energy from light and sends it down to grow roots. So that's how I do those. Now I'm going to stick it in the bucket. Moving around here. Let's go with this guy here. This one, I see a couple of spots, a couple of branches coming out of there. Let's get rid of this. So I'm going to leave for now because it's attached to that and I don't know what it is yet. So I'm going to take this one down to about there. Told myself I wasn't going to mess with these till afterward, and I'm breaking my own rules, but oh well. Okay, so moving along. Now this guy, this big one here, I can see, hopefully you can see that all right, but this big one here, it's got a branch coming out right there. And this one here is coming off of this. So I'm gonna leave both of those. I'm gonna go right above it. Now, there. These, by the way, are gonna make great cuttings. So I'm pretty excited about developing my other clump that I've been working on, other couple of clumps actually, with these cuttings. So that's what they're gonna go to. Some of the leaves inside are gonna be a little scraggly looking because they don't get as much light, so they're always kind of struggling for life in there. So we'll be sort of forgiving to them. This guy here, I'm gonna take it down to about right there. I don't want to defoliate them too much, but some of them I just don't think are gonna make the cut, so it's a little hard to decide sometimes. This isn't really meant to be a step-by-step tutorial because, you know, it's more art than it is science. So there's not really a scientific way to do it, at least not that I know of. Maybe there is. One thing I've learned that I'll add here is I've learned that it's best to, if you can, try not to get too aggressive with it on the first run. Sometimes you can get away with it, especially in summertime, you can get away with it. This time of year, it's a little harder to get away with it. And in general, they just respond better if you do it in phases, meaning, you know, you cut it down to size, get it roughly close to what you're going for, then let it recover, let it bounce back and regain some health and, you know, refoliate itself. And then you go at it again, you know, 6 months to 12 months later in the middle of the growing season where it can recover again. And then you can get a little more aggressive with it. Or if you're really patient, you can just wait until the growing season. I unfortunately am not patient enough to do that. At least not all the time. This one down to about there. So we can start to get an idea now of how it's looking inside. And it does look like we've got one big clump here, another clump there, one in the back. So I'm not going to focus on that too much just yet. Wait till we finish this. All right. So I got it down to right here. Didn't want to bore you with all of the nitty-gritty details because sometimes I spend a few minutes just kind of staring into it and seeing what I want to do, but it gives you an idea here. So I'm going to give you a close-up of the inside now so that you can kind of see what I was doing and why. So here's the current state of it. A couple things I'll point out. One, it's got roots circling the pot around and around, which to me is a good sign. And just to be clear on that, because you'll hear a lot, you know, when you see that, that means it's root bound, it's bad, da da da. And it is. You don't want to leave it in a state like that for long periods of time because eventually it will hurt the health of the tree. But it's a good sign when you're buying one of these at a store, because that means it's mostly just been left to grow and get healthy. So that means the roots are going to be vigorous. They're so vigorous, in fact, that it's wrapping around and around in the pot. I can tell you from personal experience, anytime that I've seen that, the plant has been a good specimen. That means it's got typically a thicker trunk, better root system, etc. So it doesn't scare me at all to see that. I like it. Now I'm not going to leave it like that. Like I said, I'm going to cut them when I repot this thing here soon. But that's one thing I noticed. One other thing I'll point out, and it's just something to be aware of. I don't want to scare you or anything, but occasionally you want to be a little careful sticking your hand in there, because I'm the worst at this. Like, I get all excited and I just want to dig around and kind of get some of those leaves out and see how it's looking. But you never know what's in there. I have had spiders crawl out of there before. I haven't been bit, thank goodness, but I know that these are native to Australia and New Guinea. I believe they're also grown in Asia. I don't know where they actually come from. You know, by the time I get them, I don't know where they're farmed at. So all I'm saying is that there could be spiders and stuff living in there. So just use caution before sticking your hands in there. That being said, it looks good. I'm happy with this Schefflera. I have a good feeling about it. I did notice this one root way up here. I don't know if you can see that or not. It's just sort of crossing all around, so I don't know what's going on there. But it does look like we've got one big clump over here. So I'm sure it's all connected down in there, but as far as how connected, I don't know yet. I know we've got this big daddy of a trunk over here. Hopefully you can see that okay. This one right there. And then this big clump section here. Got a little side clump action going on over there, which I don't know if you can see it or not, but that's sort of how it looks there. Back here, let me pick it up so you can see. So I am pretty excited about how this one's going to turn out. I don't know how it's going to turn out yet. I'm going to repot it with some new soil, trim some of the roots. Like I said, I'm not going to get too aggressive in this first round, but the roots will need to be trimmed. So I'm excited to see how that looks once we get in there. So I guess that's it for now. Let's go ahead and take it out of this pot, see what the roots look like, and see what this clump section situation is, and go from there. Let's go. All right, so here it is, and I want to say it's final form, but it's never really in its final form. It's in its currently final form, as in I'm finally done working with it today. So it's got a long way to go, but it turned out okay. I did remove I would say about half of it, give or take a little bit, which I'm going to do a part 2 to this video and post it in a week or two, showing what I did with the other pieces to this and what I did with the cuttings from the whole thing. So we'll do a follow-up part 2 on that. But for now, just to kind of wrap it up, this is what this one looks like. Now, eventually, what's going to happen here, I'm going to call it in phase 2. Right now, what I don't like about it is that it's got these really long-legged leaf sets on it and stems. I don't like that, but I kept them there just as a necessity because it is end of November now, so it's not in the growing season and it's not going to sprout new shoots real soon. So I wanted to keep some foliage on there so that it can stay alive and continue to absorb sunlight. I'm going to have these under grow lights for the most part this winter, which I need to do another video and show you my setup for that. So anyways, phase 2, what's going to happen is when it does start to sprout out some new shoots, some new growth everywhere, I'm going to cut these long ones back so that it will have shorter, smaller leaves. And then eventually over time, those shorter, smaller leaves get bigger and grow bigger, and then you cut them back and new smaller ones grow, and it's just a cycle. You do that over and over. Also, being that this is the first time I've put this one together, there were some areas that I debated on. It's still a little bit crowded in this area. I thought about losing this piece. I thought about maybe, taking down a couple other things. So I might tinker with it a little bit here and there, but for the most part, it's the way that I want it for now. So I'll let it recover, let it grow some new growth, and then we'll look at it for phase 2, at which point, we'll take some of these longer leaves off, leaving the newer, smaller leaves, and we'll look at maybe doing some structural changes, like perhaps getting rid of this one, or at least cutting it back some. What I would love is if this part here grew some new leaves, so I could remove this altogether, because I feel like it's kind of blocking the back. If you look at the back here, so it's got some back here that you really can't even see from the front side. So, but what I do love about it, so that's the negatives. The positives are it's got a lot of great aerial roots. Had this one here I struggled with. I could not for the life of me get it to stay under that soil. It just wants to pop right out of there, no matter what I did. So I let it win this round. It just wants to be out. But the other ones, just look at all these aerial roots. That's something that is, at least here in Boise, Idaho, it's really hard to achieve that. It's hard to get those aerial roots. So I love all the aerial roots. Some of them inevitably will probably die off. Some of these roots that are smaller and a little more vulnerable, maybe were not exposed earlier, that are exposed now. Some of them may not survive that, and that's okay. It's part of the process. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell. So I hope you liked it. And like I said, I'll post a follow-up video soon with the other pieces to this, which I plan to put into individual pots. So for any friends and family out there, I hope you like Schefflera bonsais, because Christmas is coming and I got a lot of them, so you'll probably get some. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate everybody who does, and you can see updates on this one. And I've got several other Schefflera clumps that I've done. This is probably the 6th or 7th one that I've done. I don't remember how many videos I've made. I try to make a video on each one, and they all go a little different. So yeah, so if you're at all interested in these, definitely subscribe and check out the playlist, because there's a lot of others on there too. And you'll see all the different experiences from all times of year and all different shapes and sizes of Schefflera and others. So thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.